So we're here today with the Carulli Waltz, Opus 121, number 1. And so first thing we're going to do on this, instead of just jumping right in, is we're actually just going to look at the full page. And if you look at this, I've really compressed it and smushed it, but we don't really need to read the notes anyway. We're just looking for big structural things. So whenever we first get a piece, the first thing that we want to do is we want to just kind of look for a basic roadmap. We want to see what exactly we've got going on here, the big sections. So things to look for, repeat signs. Here's one. There's a repeat sign. So that marks a section. Also long notes, like this right here is a half note where we've got a stream of eighth notes. So then that could be a section ending as well if there wasn't a repeat sign there. Looking down, there's another one, a fine. That means we'll eventually end there. Once we go through, and we'll be coming back through and then ending right there. Looking through, here's another one. And then finally, then there's the end of the page right there. So we've got these different sections right here. So what you could do then is you could name them. Let's just name this first one the A section. The second one, take a wild guess here, the B section. Third one right here is our C section. And then lastly, we've got our D section. So 4 sections, and each of them repeat. So our basic form on this then is going to be AA, BB, CC, DD, because each of these repeat, and then we're going to DC al fine, DC di capo. Al fine means go back to the beginning, play all the way till you see the fine, which means the end. And so we're not going to do the repeats the second time. We're just going to go A and then B again. So this is our form right there. A, B, B, C, C, D, D, A, B. And so it's a pretty long piece. When we look at it in this way, there's a lot of repeated material, but it gets pretty long by the time we get there. So now that we've got the basic form of the piece, and we've got the our basic roadmap, now we can actually get into the nuances, and our decisions that we make on the small scale can be informed by our knowledge that this is a bigger structure, and we know exactly how big it is now and what we're dealing with. That we have 4 sections, each of them repeat, and then we come back and do the first couple again. So let's bring back now, and we'll just come right to this waltz right here. So here we are, and so here we go. Let's do this. So now we're at the beginning, and we can start in on this first section. So we're on the A section here, right? This is our A section that we're working with first. So there's a lot of different ways that we could go about this. What most people do is they just jump right in and start playing notes, and they go one note at a time, and they just freight train through this thing. And that is about the worst way that you could possibly get into this piece. If you really want to learn this piece and play it well, then it's not the best strategy. Maybe once, if you're just sight reading it, to be able to hear what it sounds like. But what a lot of people do is they want to hear it, and they want to hear it right from the beginning. So they'll start with the first measure, and they'll just start plowing away at this thing and bludgeoning it to death, sight reading it to death. And that's not a great way to do it. And it certainly doesn't lead to understanding, and it doesn't lead to good music for other people to listen to. And that's really what we're wanting to do here, is make it to where we're playing beautiful, compelling music that other people will thank us for and enjoy when we play it. So how are we going to do that? Well, first, let's just look at what's going into this. So these are all arpeggios. These are just all finger-picking arpeggios. There's not a discernible stepwise melody like Mary Had a Little Lamb or something like that. There's not a note. It's just a sea of notes is what we're given. We are given these half notes at the beginning of each measure, and that just means that they ring, these dotted half notes. It means that these need to ring throughout the entire measures, and so we don't want to let go of them. Basically, keep that finger down. If that one's playing, keep it down. What that would tell us then was that these are probably chords that we're playing here. It's more than likely some chord shapes that we're dealing with in this. And so the first thing that I would do would be to take this bass line, here they are, and I would just play this bass line as its own as its own thing. So here, look, we're going to do that now. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's our basic sweep for the whole first section, yes? C, C, B, C, 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 G, C. So that's our basic thing. It changes in the third measure, comes back to C on the fourth measure. So that's one layer of understanding that we can have. So what we could do is we could say, okay, how do we want that to be? And we could make that as beautiful as possible, as if that was the entire piece. 1, 2, 3, and here, back, here, and here, and then here again. We could play with it, different dynamics. We can look at the dynamics that they say, dynamics being this mezzo forte over here and this piano. They're saying basically play this loud, play this soft. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to reserve judgment on that as far as if that's the most compelling way to do it. As time goes on, and if you listen to me in my analysis of pieces, you'll know that I don't necessarily always go by the dynamics that are suggested, and sometimes do the exact opposite, but it's always for good reason, and I always check out what they're doing first. The notes, I typically play the right notes, but the dynamics, I feel the freedom to move around however I want to and do whatever I want to with them, provided that it actually serves the piece in the best way possible in a large structure. More on that later. So for now, we've got our bass line here, right? Great. So that's our first thing. What we could do from this point is then look at what else is going on in this piece here. So we're back to a clean version here. Well, now I'm going to notice what's the same going through here, and that's this G right here. If you look at, there's a G. There's this G right here that just goes through this entire thing. So the question is, how long does this G last? And it lasts the entire section, right? Here it is. Pardon my sloppy writing. It's not even because it's on the computer. It's like, this is what I look like. This is what my writing looks like on a regular piece of paper as well. It's just sloppy. A calligrapher, I am not. So here we have this G. Now, whenever we have something that's continuing through, it's called a pedal. It's just this note that's constantly going through. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and it's just the same thing over and over. Whenever we have this, we don't want to bring much attention to it. We basically want to get it out of the way because it's just kind of it's a canvas that's there. It's like the lighting in your house. Do you have cool lighting or you have warm lighting? You know, if you go to a place, you know, what's the basic feel of the place? Is it a cloudy day? Is it a sunny day? Is it dark outside? Is it light outside? This G is that sort of thing. It's this canvas that just covers everything and helps to create an overall cohesion and atmosphere. We don't want to make a big thing of it, which means that when we play it, we'll want to play it softly. And whenever we see repeated material like that within the interior of a line like this, or interior of all these other notes, we want to get it out of the way. Because it's not interesting. It doesn't change. So then the question is, what does change, right? And so what does change are these upper lines right here. So this looks like the changing line. Whoops. This looks like the changing line right here, right? It's these beats on beats 2 and 3 of each measure. So let's just play that then and listen to it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Continuing on, measure 5. So that's our melody. That's the melody. That's what's actually changing. That's the interesting line. And if you'll notice, got these as well. Well, if you'll notice, there's also this note. And at the end, we have this block chord, right? We have a big chord. It's 4 notes all at the same time. But it's not really 4 notes at the same time. What it is we have a melody note on the top, we have a bass note on the bottom, and we have that same G that's in there, right? There's our same G right there. And then we have an E in there as well, making this a chord. So really what we have are different parts that happen to be playing at the same time. Just like a choir, you know, they're all just singing at the same time. It doesn't mean that it's all one thing. There's still a melody line on top, and that's the C. And so we want to bring that out. So playing this without any of the other parts will really help get that in your ear as a melody line. So having that in your ear as the main point will help you to play it more beautifully, and it'll actually tell your listener, if you know what it is and then you demonstrate it to your listener, then they'll know what to listen to. They'll say, oh, okay, now I know what's interesting. It's if you took them into a room or something and you didn't tell them anything about it, then that's one thing. But if you actually go around and you pick up every object and you say, check this out, this is a beautiful object, and look at the way the color splashes against that wall, and look at the way the light comes in the window, they'll have a much richer experience because you're actually showing them, you're demonstrating to them what is beautiful about the room. It's the same thing with a piece of music. Good music doesn't play itself. You have to demonstrate to your listener what is beautiful about it and what they should be listening to. It's a big game of show and tell. And so what this is we want to show the melody. We want to make sure that they know the melody. And part of that is keeping the melody alive in the midst of a big chord. Whenever we have a big chord there, we don't want the chord to drown out the melody. We want the chord to just support the melody and make the entire thing richer. So how do we do that? We'll talk about getting to that chord in just a second. But I just want to make sure that we have the parts now separated so that we know exactly what's going on. We have our bass. Here's our bass. And we have our melody. So to get this chord happening, let's first just play just the bass and the melody together. That bass means basically we're playing this whole thing without the G's in there. So bass line, we're just playing straight quarter notes now. So there's our line, right? With the bass and the melody. So when we come into this chord, we still want that to be what we're hearing, right? We have a bass and we have a melody. Those were the wrong notes. We still want the melody to be louder than the bass so that we can know what it is. So then we would need to put these other 2 notes in. So now let's talk about this chord and how to balance this chord out, because this is really important. And I go into depth on this in my right hand rework video series, and my it's a big rework right hand technique studies. So the basic gist is whenever you want to bring a note out, which we do, we want to bring this top note out, you want to just bring that A finger, poke it out a little bit further than the others from the big knuckle, put it down, and then just put your fingers onto the strings, this finger poking out, the A finger poking out further than the others, and then just close your hand. And it'll just bring that note out more than the other. You don't want to try to play it harder. If you have really bad technique, you're going to end up trying to play it harder and just trying to, really adjust how much tension you're putting into each finger. And that's really not the way to go. But if you have bad technique, then that's the way you're going to have to do it, because there's no other way to do it if you're not playing very well. So nothing personal. So stick your A finger out, put the 3 on the strings, the 3 fingers on the strings. You can do the thumb as well. And then just close your hand all at the same pressure. Ideally with your tip joints being passive closed into your hand, like one hand clapping. You can also play with letting your I and M fingers just barely touch the strings in preparation. So just barely, they're just whisper light on the strings while the A finger is depressing the string. And you can really get that to pop out, that note. That's the note we want, not the A, but the C. There it is. This is worth practicing, just getting your balance good. And you're gonna need this for tons of different songs that you play. So it's worth practicing being able to balance out each finger of a chord. Like, being able to balance each note of a chord out depending on what it is that you need for that moment. Great, so now we've got all this stuff. We've got our bass line, we've got our melody line, and we've got our balance of our chord. So now we can put it all together and play with the G as well. Now when we're playing the G, we want to remember to really play that lightly. And you might want to go slow when you're practicing this at first, just so that you can actually get it. So play one note and stop. One note loud, stop, and now play the G very quietly. And you want to exaggerate in your practice as quiet as you can possibly play it. And then bring out the A, quiet again on the G, and then loud on the A finger again, the E. And just go slowly. No extra points for going at full tempo, because the main thing that you want is to delineate the parts. And so now we're putting in the G. And so listen to the G and make sure that every single one of the G's are quiet. They're just there. They're not demanding any attention. So that we have the balance right on everything. So go as slow as you need to go, take as much time as you need to do that, to get that to where you have all of your parts in exactly how you want them. Now that we have the basic balance and we know the notes, yes? We know the notes. One more thing on actually just learning the notes while we're talking about this. So let's just go to a clean score here. One of the ways that you can do this so that you can learn this quickly is to just look at what is the chord shape. What chord am I playing? If you know some theory, then you could actually do an analysis on it and say, okay, this is a C chord, this is a C chord, another C chord, this is a G7 chord with a B in the bass, and then this is a C. It's fine if you don't know that, then that's perfectly fine. And it doesn't, you can pick it up as time goes on. The other way to do this is to, let me grab another color here, is to look at it and do some kind of a shorthand like this right here. Let's say for this chord, it would be X3, X, O, X3. And so each of these represents a string. This is the low E string, we don't play it. This is the A string, we play the 3, 3rd fret, so the numbers are frets. X means don't play that 4th string. The O means play the 3rd string open, that's our G in the middle. And then we have X, don't play the B string at all. And then we have 3, that's our G up there, that's that note. And so if you wanted to, then you could just maybe put the O underneath it, because then you say that one changes to that. And that would just give you, it would give you that. So it's just kind of a shorthand way. It's almost like a tab, something like that way of getting it. So you could actually go through and map this out. This next one will be X3, XO, 1, X, and then it would change to O right there. And so you can map this out the entire thing if you wanted to, but you could just, to get the notes in your hand, I would definitely just play just chords. So starting off, something like that, to where you're just playing straight 2 chords per measure, and the rhythm of the piece now goes out the window, and it doesn't really matter because you're just looking at the left hand. It's basically the left hand by itself. You can make noise with the right hand if you want to, just to get it in your ear more, but it's not necessary. Really, we're just looking at the left hand. Ideally, in everything that we play, It would be nice to memorize it, or at least know it memorized well enough, but then still play with the music as a cue card. And so one of the ways that we memorize, one of the best ways we memorize, is just when we're just very familiar with the piece from a number of different perspectives. And so what we've been doing is getting the piece from a number of different perspectives. We've been examining it, just the bass line, just the melody line, looking at the interior voice and looking at it by itself, looking at the chords as chunks, which is what we just did. And so there's all these different things. By the time you actually get through that, chances are you kind of know it. You've got a relationship with it, a working relationship with it. You've been examining it, having lots of different conversations with it. Great. So now what I'd like to do is think about the dynamics of this whole thing. So now let's talk about larger structure. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to a blank sheet of paper here. So with this blank sheet of paper here, I just want to look at, this is our 8-bar section, yes? This is 8 bars. This is our entire A section right here. And so, but then it repeats, right? So we have another 8. So this is our A section, right? This is our A section. And so one way to do it, so what they're saying to do is this right here. They're saying mezzo forte and then piano. And then again, mezzo forte and then piano. Which is kind of an echo type of thing, right? We start off with kind of loud and then we're going to say kind of the same thing but a little bit different, kind of a question answer. We ask a question loudly and then we answer it kind of quietly, and then we ask the question again loudly and then we answer it a little bit quietly again. I'm not gonna buy it, actually. I'm gonna go a different route on that. And instead think about it from a larger perspective as this entire 16 bars, because what that does by having it in those, it splits it into 4-bar phrases. We have a medium loud phrase, and then we have a quiet phrase, and another medium loud, and then another quiet. 4 different things. And instead, what if we thought about it as one big thing, all 16 bars? So instead we have this. We have an entire 16-bar section instead of just 4 4s or 2 8s, one big thing. And so how do we do that? And basically we want to figure out some sort of sweep that encompasses the entire 16 bars. So there's a couple of different ways we could go about it. Let me just get a fresh one here. So one way that we could go about it would be to get louder for the first 8, get quieter for the second 8. Right? Taking this, and now it's a larger structure. It's one big sweep. That's kind of what this line up here is doing. It gets, if this was like dynamic level, it would get louder and then it would get quieter. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to do the exact opposite, which would be to start off loud, get quieter, and then crescendo at the end. And so these are two different ways that we could think about it as big pictures. Of course, there'll still be little crescendos. The actual line on this right here would probably be something like this, and it would be going up and then it would come back down. It wouldn't be a straight up and a straight down. There'd be little things going on within it. Obviously, we have our G note that's continuing to be quiet, our little G that stays low. So basically the whole thing is variable, but as a big picture, it could get louder in the middle, or get louder through the first time, get softer the second time, or start off loud, get quieter, and then get louder again. If this happens, whatever happens on this, if this got loud here, I would start the next section in the way that we went into it. So I would move it across the bar. So if this ended loud right here, I would start the next one loud. And then either do the same type of sweep or do something different within that, but I would start it the same way just so that the sections flow together. We'll talk about that more later. Same thing with this one. If that was the case, then I would do something like this to where the new section would be quiet because we're just coming out of this point right here and then moving forward. So let's decide on one of them. Let's just listen to both of them and see what's going on with both of them. So we'll just do this one. Yeah, we'll choose this one just because it still has the melody and everything in it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to get louder for the first time through, all 8, and then quieter for the second time through. So we're going to start off strong. And just starting to get a little bit softer. Too soft now. And growing. And then we would start the next one strong if that's what we were going to do. So that's one way, right? So that's starting loud, decrescendoing the first time through the repeat, crescendoing through the second time through repeat. Let's do the opposite now. Now we're going to start it quietly. Now we're going to start it quietly and then crescendo through the whole thing. So now we'll just do a crescendo basically through the whole first time, and then the second time we'll do a decrescendo. So we're going to start quietly this time. And then getting louder. 2, 3. Starting strong this time. And then starting to wane off a little bit. Ending quiet. And then we would start the new one quietly if we did it that way. So which do we do? It's a personal choice. But whatever we do, we want to make sure that we're working in a big 16-bar phrase using the repeat as part of our concept instead of just these little 4-bar phrase that are mentioned, because these are a little bit shallow. This type of echo routine, a little bit shallow. Surely we can do better than that, right? So we're just completely ignore them. Great. So what do? We have to choose one. Just for kicks, let's choose the first one that we did. You know, I'm choosing this pretty arbitrarily here, which is the first time we'll decrescendo. So first time we start off loud, and then the second time we'll get louder through, and that means that we'll do this one right here and not do that one. Great. So that's the one we'll do. So now we've spent a bunch of time on the A section. We can look at the B section and the C section and the D section, and chances are we'll be doing a lot of the same things with them as we did with the first, and so we might not spend as much time on it here as we did, but I would in practice actually spend a bunch more time on it as well. So just looking, this is right here is now the B section. This is where we are. This is our B section, and that goes all the way to right here. And so we're just looking at this, and so I would go through the exact same process as we did for the A section. That is, first off, looking at the bass notes, I'd play this bass line as if it were the only line that there was. Here we have a chord again. It's looking very similar, isn't it? Different notes, but basically the same concept as the first one. We have that. We have a bass line. We have this internal G is just like this G line is going throughout the entire thing, the entire section, and then the moving line is the top line. That's the top line is the one that's actually moving, and so it's the exact same scenario as the A section, and so we just want to go through the exact same process again. Get those one at a time, just the bass. 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. That's our bass line. Get it in your ear, so we can really, really hear that. Now, this is it's pretty interesting. If we look at this as just a clean copy, so this is what we were talking about earlier. Is what we have. It's this again, right? Which is this echo idea, making it into 4-bar bits instead of larger bits. So again, you'll see this a lot in music. Keep an eye out for it. This childish idea of the echo as being some sort of musical master plan. It's a kind of an easy go-to for a lot of editors, and it's pretty poor. So do something better than that. Do something better than an echo. If anything, say it first one way and then say it again another way. That sort of thing. I mean, when we repeat the same thing twice, what do? Like if you hear a mother talking to the kid, come here. Come here. It's like we say it again because we mean it, because there's a reason to say it again. If it's similar material and we're repeating it in music, it should be we should have that too. It's like, why are we saying it again? We have to have some sort of reason instead of just come here. Come here. Like whispering it to ourselves as an echo. Maybe once in a while, but not as a go-to. And this seems to be the case in this piece as a go-to. Not so hot. So anyway, I could go on and rail against the bad dynamics that editors choose for music quite a lot, but you basically get the point of what I'm saying here. So same exact thing as before. Balance the chord really well. We still have our chord. Balance it exactly the same way. Practice the melody line, practice the bass line, practice everything together. And then let's look at, we have we still want to think about the big sweep as well. So for our basic idea here, let's go to a blank. For the basic idea of what we've got going on, we've got, just to review, we've got our A section, which is 16. We've got our B section, which is 16. We've got our C section, which is 16. Our D section, which is 16. And then our finally AB. And so this is what's happening. So we have A, B, B, C, C, D, D, and then A and B again at the end. And that's how we wind it out, right? So this is our big schematic of the pieces we're doing it right now. And so what we decided before was we were going to start this loud, get quiet here, and then start the second one quiet, get louder toward the end. Now, since this one ended loud, we're just going to bust right in. So let's just, for the kicks, let's just do the same thing for this one. And we might change it up on the next one, but this seems to be working for now. We'll just keep with it. So we'll just do this again. Now, what we could do as another option, and we might do this on the C or something like that, would be to do something like, so we get quieter, but then we do actually go into a 4-bar phrase and then get quieter at the end. So we might taper it off the end so that we can start the next one quiet. Something like that, right? So we have a number of possibilities, but it all depends on what the music's doing in the next section. So we don't want to make that decision yet, right? So for now, we'll just think about it as being the same, even though we might change it later. And we can always go back and we can always change it, right? We're just working with something to begin with, making a decision, and then working with it, and then we can always go back and change it. But at least we're going to start with something concrete that we're working with. So going back up here, got our B section here. This is the one we were just talking about. And so that's the way we're going to do it. So let's just play that now. And so we'll just do it with those same dynamics that we were just doing, which is first time, we're doing the first time, we're going to crescendo, First time, decrescendo, second time, crescendo. That's what we were doing. So we're just going to end with this last chord really strongly. 2, 3. And then quiet. We're getting quieter now. And we're going to start quiet. Slowly getting louder. And then we'll go into the next section. So that's the decision we made right now. Going through all of the different ways that we practiced it before, same exact thing, and now we've got that. So listening to this next section then we can ask, okay, what's the best, what would we like to do with this? So let's just listen, let's go through and look at this next section, this C section. And so we're looking at, it looks like a little bit different here, doesn't it? So as we're looking at this, is the structure that it was before. We have a bass line. Yes, we still have that. Excellent. We've still got our bass line. Let's get that in there. Still got our bass line. But now it seems to be different. Our G is gone, right? Adios G. So now we don't have the G anymore. And what we have are these notes up here. And they're actually not moving anywhere, are they? Here we have a different bass note. This looks different, right? As we just move down here, we've got our basic same dotted half notes. Dotted half, dotted half, dotted half, dotted half. But here we have a half and then a quarter, and so it's just slightly different. We have the same thing down here, right? This further serves to split it into 4-bar phrases, and so we want to make sure that we overcome that so that we can keep it moving in a larger, keep the bigger picture in mind. So we don't want to make too big of a deal of it in the middle of this, right? Like this section right here, we don't want to make too big of a deal of that, because we don't want to create a stopping point for the music. We ultimately got a long way to go still in this piece. We want to keep moving forward. So, as we go forward here, we can look at it, and it might be that we just listen to the chords then. Go back and do your chords. This will be the way that we were talking about it earlier. This right here with the, let's just get all this other stuff off of here. Let me move this back up. Here we are. Forgive me. First one. I'm sure they'll get smoother with time. Okay. So here, if we look at the code that we were using earlier, this would be XXX210. This one would be, that's actually a little bit sloppy. This would be XXX210. This one would be XXX130. So you could go through and do this for all of them if you like, or just read the notes. that's our basic line with the harmonies, right? The harmonies just being the chords as they're made up. So taking all the gobbledygook out of there, just playing just the chords. I would do that, absolutely, for all of these sections when learning this piece. Really just break it apart and just do left hand by itself as a rule. So the difference in this is that this is minor, and the rest has been in this nice C major, right? We've just been playing C, G7, C, G7, the whole piece through now, but now all of a sudden we're going into this A minor, this minor, A minor, E7, A minor, E7, A minor, E7, A, is basically the gist of it, right? So because it's gone darker, quote unquote, darker in the harmonies, and also because it's in the higher register, which is naturally thinner on the guitar, my general sense would be to say this section should be a little bit dark and introspective, quieter is what I mean by that. And that's exactly what they said as well. All of a sudden, if we look at the dynamics for this section, what do we got? We've got mezzo piano and piano in here. And so that's what they're saying as well. They're still splitting it into 4-bar phrases, but at least they're saying this section's a little bit quieter, right? And I would agree with that, just based on the harmony. Because of that, I might actually taper down this last, in the section before, I might end up doing this type of thing at the very end. So that then it could just come out of it. In that way. I would still go, I would still be thinking about the bass as its thing, keeping on. The difference is with this melody and the melody before is that we don't have a moving line. Do you notice that? We don't have, it's this note right here. We don't have a moving line. It stays the same on the top. The upper note stays the same, where before they were moving down, right? Or they were just moving around. That was our melody. What we could do for kicks is we could look at what is moving, and that's the middle line. The bass is moving as well, but we could look at just the middle line by itself. So that way we have D in the second measure, C in the third measure, that's the B in the fourth, and then back to C, D, B, and finally A. And so what that was the middle line, right? Boom, 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 boom. Just as that. Exploring this, and it might be that you don't actually bring that note out or anything like that, but knowing that that is a moving line, and that's kind of as close to a melody line as we've got in this, is helpful to know in the way that you want to go about phrasing this. So we have, using your balanced chords again, just like we talked about earlier, you could actually just go through, play these, and bring out that note, but still play the E on the top. Now the E's the pedal in this one, really, and right? It's the one that stays the same the whole time, is the upper note. So bring out the middle note. And that way, it's a great chord balance project for you. Is to bring out that middle note on every one, and so balance the chords out. And it'll really get it in your ear what's really going on there. Now, what we also are dealing with in this, what we're also dealing with is repeated notes, right? So if we look at this, what we've got, let's get a clean copy. What we've got here is are a whole lot of repeated notes. Let me just bring this up. Because we're repeating these notes right here, da 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 da, right? Whenever we have repeated notes, we want to bring them forward. We don't want to just play them static. Maybe once in a while, but generally, more times than not, as a basic rule, we want to bring repeated notes forward, meaning we want to crescendo them. So I would think of each of these little measures that have that as just a minute little surge. So instead of going, which is as even as I can make it, dun 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 dun, instead of that, how about we go, that sort of thing. Something like that, to where each one of them is its own little surge, and then it comes back. So within each little measure is its own little crescendo. And whenever we have repeated notes, that's generally a good idea. 99% of the time, if you have repeated material like that, that's just going back and forth, or just a single note that's repeating, even if it just repeats a couple of times, more times than not, crescendo it. And it'll make it much, much nicer. So within that, then we have that. So we've got the chords on their own, and then we've got the dynamics of each within there, which is kind of give them just a little bit of a surge. So it ends up being this type of thing. Even with this one, this is something I want to talk about this for a second, actually. So the fact that we now have a bass note right here, this is the first time this has happened in the entire piece, right? And we have it again right here. So this is something that's different in this section than the other section. So it's kind of nice to really, we don't want to stop on it or do any kind of crazy affected time stuff, but just I would play it strongly just to bring it out. It basically moves things forward. We have the bass line from the beginning of the section, right? Da dong. It's a new feature, so why not call attention to it a little bit and say, oh, by the way, look, there's this new thing happening right here as well. It's good to do. So within that, then how are we gonna actually work this into the larger scheme? So what kind of dynamic sequence would we like to do with the whole thing? It might be that, let's just check it out. We're definitely going to start it quietly, right? We could just do the basic crescendo. Let's go back and look at our big dynamic page right here. That's what we're doing here. Because this is getting quieter, then we are going to want to do something different than this right here on this. So maybe this second time through at the end, we actually do want to do what we were talking about, which is get louder in the middle and then taper down at the end. And then we want to start this quiet. Now this C section here, we could think about doing the exact reverse. So something like that. But this section is a little bit more complex than that in the ear, isn't it? So it might be that we might like more of this type of thing. So that it actually, it gets louder in the middle, comes back down, gets louder in the middle, comes back down. So now we actually are moving in smaller sections like this. Within this, I would still think of a big shape going from there to there. And we definitely want to think about the connection of this to this. We want to think about this connective area right there. Because that's really an important spot in each of these, is how do these connect? How do we move from one section to the next? Because the last thing we want to do is sit it down and say, and it's over. But now I'm going to start again. We want to say every single new section is a continuation of the one that came before it. And so our connective tissues between sections are just as important as our connective tissues between notes. We want a nice legato between this note to this note. We want a nice legato between this section and this section. And we do that by the way that we handle dynamics, especially when we got a big old fat rest, like right here, when we have a big fat rest right here at the end of each section, which is just murderous as far as connecting them through. So however we're going to work it, it's going to be something like this. So then let's just go and see what this next section is doing over here. Next section will be, next section is section D. Yes? This section D is looking mighty similar to section C, except that one, we have this bass is a pedal. This is our pedal note is down here, yes? Until the very end. Our E is sustaining through the entire thing. They're basically saying, do a great big old crescendo up and then taper down at the end. I probably wouldn't do that taper at the end. Not as who knows what I would do on it. I wouldn't necessarily do it. It seems a little bit anticlimactic, but who knows? Who knows? So looking at this, again, what we're going to end up doing, here we have repeated stuff again. We are going to surge each of these, and that is for sure, because that's just how we handle repeated material. So within that, then there'll be some other thing as well. So once again, pragmatically, go through, get your chords. It is kind of two things. That's the trap of the writing, is that it breaks it into two different phrases. Da 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 da. It makes it into two things. That means that we have to connect it in such a way that it turns it into one thing. And that's the challenge that we're faced with as performers. That's our challenge as performers, is to make it all cohesive. And so how do we do that? First off, we definitely crescendo each one like we're talking about. And I would think of this as one big line. Let's try it. Top whatever that was. So how are we going to do it? Excellent question. What I just did that time was just went through and crescendoed the entire first time, pretty much, right? I kept bearing on this as it went back down. So I basically treated this entire first section as it would be this right here. Let me get down there. I treated it as this right here. The big D section it did. And so then it might be that the first time, and then the way that it actually says it, little decrescendo at the end, the second time. So bring that down a little bit at the end. Let's try that. We'll go back up here and try it. Let's try it that way. So I'm starting off, I'm going to crescendo the entire one. And then I'm going to back off just that sort of thing. It could work. Basically, we're just wanting our one connection. We're wanting this to connect to this really nicely. And then we're wanting this to connect to the very top, the DC. We're wanting that to connect really well as well. So I think that works the way that we did it on the other page down here. I think that this works basically right there. So then lastly, that just leaves us with what do we do on the return, right? So let's take a look at the return. So we're going to go back to our A section, right? And then this is our return. If we decrescendoed into that, if we decrescendoed into that, then we could just basically do the exact same thing, which is a big crescendo the first time, and then a big decrescendo the second. Let's do this on this one. So a big crescendo here. Let me find it. There. Big crescendo there. And then for the second one, I'm just going to guess if we want to end it strong, then we're going to want this. That means that we're going to do something like that. Let's play with that and just see if that works. So we're just playing here. This is pure experimentation, pure play that we're doing here. So here we have, let me just bump this up just a smidge so I can see the whole thing. There's our whole last section, our A section and our B section, until we so that we're finishing right here at the fine. So let's just do that. So what that was then was crescendo through the whole thing, right? And then decrescendoing to the first four here, and then crescendoing back up from there. So we decrescendo here, and then crescendo to the end, right there. Let's try it. That's the end. So now I'm just getting louder. Three. Now I'm going to crescendo, which ends it strong. I think that works. Something like that. I do. But the main point is that we think in big, we make these hard decisions about the big structure. So I think it's really important to have some sort of overall scheme like this so that you know your basic roadmap of how you're going to handle all of this as far as a big picture. With your dynamic sweep, it'll make it much more interesting to your listeners. It'll make it much more interesting to play, and it gets you into the habit of making the hard decisions and making them from a big structural standpoint instead of one of my teachers called it the school of ribbons and bows, where you're thinking all about just this measure. I like this measure to be like this. Well, it's like, well, yes, that's great, so long as it fits into the bigger picture, so long as it fits into this, that this is what matters, is the big picture. And if you have some sort of little dynamic thing that you like to do, or if you have some sort of timing thing like a rubato, like some note slowing down a little bit, something like that, well, that's cool and all, so long as it fits into the big picture. If it doesn't, then don't do it. So in other words, don't retard at the end of each of these sections. There's no retard here. There's no retard here. We have a long way to go. Why do we want to slow down and stop? We don't want to say stops. We want things to keep moving forward. And so that's our goal. That's the overriding goal for everything we do. The long line, keep things moving forward. And so all of our decisions that we make, as far as timing, rubato stuff, as far as retards and that kind of thing, and as far as dynamics, encourage things to keep moving forward and staying interesting. Just like in a movie, just like in a book, We want one chapter to move to the next. We want one scene to move to the next. So there's never a good time to put it down. There's never a good time to get up and run to get some popcorn or go to the bathroom. There's never that spot to where it's ideal to do it right then, because it never stops. It's always leading forward. That's what we want in our music, and that's what I hope that you can do in your practice when you're learning these pieces, is to put that in there. So I hope that helped. I hope that you have a great day. If you want to, if you have any questions, get a hold of me. It's classicalguitarshed.com. And please stop by, subscribe to this, leave a comment, share it with your friends and your buddies, all the good stuff. I'll see you next time.